There's really no point trying to explain the plot of Lost to someone who's never seen the show. It's overly complicated and convoluted to the point that anyone who even tries comes across sounding like a crazy person. But if we're going to go on this journey together into the history of Lost, I need all of us to have at least some basic information. So because I love my viewers, I'm going to try my best to give a really quick summary. Here we go. A plane crashes on a mysterious island. The survivors, each with their own dark, troubled past, band together in order to survive and hopefully escape. But the island has unique magnetic properties that allow it to avoid detection from the outside world and also travel through space and time, making it almost impossible for the survivors to leave. The source of all this power comes from a light at the center of the island. This light represents the goodness of all mankind. Jacob is the protector of the island, but his brother, the man in black, wants to extinguish the light so he can escape the island. So basically, Jacob is good incarnate, and the man in black is evil incarnate. If the light were to go out, the man in black could leave and spread his evil throughout the world. Jacob has already thwarted his brother's previous plan, turning him into a smoke monster that now inhabits the island. The brothers are incapable of harming each other, so they need humans to do their bidding. Looking for his replacement as the protector, Jacob gathers candidates together on Oceanic Flight 815 and makes sure that the flight crashes on their island. What ensues is a battle of good versus evil, as the man in black orchestrates events that kill these candidates one by one as Jacob searches for his replacement. And as this larger war wages between good and evil, there's also the Dharma Initiative, the Others, nuclear bombs, polar bears, the Black Rock, a giant four-toed Egyptian statue, an underground frozen crank wheel, 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42... You see? Pointless. The two-part premiere aired on September 22nd and 29th of 2004. At the time, it was the most expensive pilot ever made, reportedly costing an estimated $10 to $14 million. But it was also the most watched pilot at the time, with 18.6 million viewers. And after all these years, I still think that Lost has the best pilot episode I've ever seen. It has all the elements an effective pilot should have. A unique premise, a fully realized world, profound themes, clearly defined conflicts, a diverse cast of flawed characters, a mysterious hook at the beginning and end, and a simple yet ingenious story structure that allows all these elements to be explored in an effective way. Lost racked up a number of prestigious awards throughout its 6-season run. It had a profound and lasting effect on the countless viewers who fervently watched it, combing and dissecting every detail from week to week, until the show finally concluded on May 23, 2010. But for a show with such a promising beginning, the cultural legacy Lost left behind is a mixed one, marred in negativity and cynicism. In this video, I want to explore the history and lasting legacy of Lost, pinpointing low moments throughout the show's 6-season run as I search for the day Lost died. Not only do I think that Lost has one of the best pilots of all time, but I think the first season as a whole might be my favorite single season of a TV show. There wasn't a bad episode in the entire season that was full of twists and turns as we learned more about the characters through use of flashbacks. Despite a lackluster episode or two, Season 2 was fantastic as well. It was really only during Season 3 that mediocre episodes began to pile up more frequently. Flashbacks were once an effective and engaging storytelling device, but by Season 3, they became repetitive and hindered forward momentum of the storyline. And this issue became painfully obvious in what might be the worst episode of the entire series, Stranger in a Strange Land. From the very first episode, flashbacks were used to enrich the story. They told us who these people were before they got to the island, hinted at how they all might be connected, and gave insight into their motivations on the island. But by Season 3, most characters had fully fleshed out their backstory and had nothing else to tell. Now, instead of enriching the characters, the flashbacks only seemed to enrich the larger mythology. They were only interesting as a way to plant small clues and insights, but didn't really matter anymore when it came to defining the characters. Whereas Jack's flashbacks in Season 1 tell the audience about his marriage to Sarah and his troubled relationships with his father, Stranger in a Strange Land tells the audience about the origins of his tattoo. It was a pointless storyline that made for such a dull episode. Co-showrunner Carlton Cuse admitted in an interview that by Season 3, the writers didn't know what else to explore with Jack's past. The first half of Season 3 felt like the show was spinning its wheels, and it was. The general thinking of TV studios at the time was, if a show is still making money, then keep it going for as long as possible. That way of thinking worked for hundreds of shows in the past, but Lost was a unique show built upon a central mystery and a definitive endpoint. But since Lost was so successful for ABC, the studio tried to stretch it out for as long as possible. which meant that the writers found themselves having to spin their wheels indefinitely. And they did this with flashbacks. With no end point in sight, flashbacks became longer and less essential. This issue became so apparent in the episode Stranger in a Strange Land that showrunners Lindelof and Hughes approached the network and pointed to this specific episode as evidence to the detriment that spinning wheels indefinitely would have for the show. ABC relented and agreed to give the writers 3 truncated seasons to tell the story they wanted to tell. Because of that, Lost was able to regain its creative focus and move forward to a definitive ending. The slower pace of Season 3 was then replaced with a more streamlined narrative through Seasons 4 and 5. Pointless flashbacks were replaced with flash forwards in Season 4 and jumps in time in Season 5. And in Season 6, we were given flash sideways storylines leading to the conclusion in the final episode, The End. A series finale that split the entire fanbase in half. There were those who really enjoyed the way Lindelof, Hughes, and the writers resolved the storylines and mythology, and others who were severely disappointed that 6 years of rabid dissection and devotion had led to a small church in purgatory. A large issue with Season 6 as a whole is that the flash sideways scenes meant absolutely nothing to the overall plot on the island. It had nothing to do with Juliet smacking the bomb at the end of Season 5, it had nothing to do with saving the island or defeating the Man in Black. That made for a slower-paced, more disconnected final season. And it even felt like a cheat since Lindelof and Hughes repeatedly said from the beginning that Lost wasn't about purgatory. The speculation they were debunking was that the island was in purgatory, and to their credit, it wasn't. But watching a plotline throughout Season 6 that revolved entirely in purgatory still felt like a slight betrayal. And by the time the series came to an end, we were left with a pile of unanswered questions and abandoned plotlines. It felt like the writers just gave up, knowing that it would be impossible to tie up all the loose ends they created over 6 years. And they were probably right. And so in the final episode, The End, the writers refocused on what was most important, the characters. At its core, Lost was a show about broken, flawed people finding redemption through community. That's the theme Lost always hit on throughout the series.
But if we can't live together, we're gonna die alone.
They all needed each other in order to find hope and meaning in their lives. And the writers made sure to reinforce this theme in the series finale. The ending definitely felt cheesy, but I didn't mind that as much as the fact that the end felt rushed and haphazard in its execution. To the writers' credit, they told the story they wanted to tell, or at least the best version of the story they could while juggling writer strikes and sudden cast departures over the run of the series. Audience expectations were impossibly high. But again, that's what happens when a show continually kicks the can of answers down the road week after week after week, despite continuously dangling a carrot in front of the audience with marketing that always says, "This week, all your questions will be answered." But I don't think The End is the day Lost died. I think it died 2 episodes prior, on May 11th, 2010, in the episode Across the Sea. An episode where the audience was finally given answers, but didn't like the answers they were given, or the way in which they were presented. A major frustration throughout the run of Lost was that the creators struggled to strike the right balance between mythology and character. At different times, they would seem to flip-flop back and forth about their importance. Did it all matter? Or did none of it matter? Like any show, the characters should be the most important aspect, because if the audience doesn't care about them, then there is nothing at stake. There's no drama. But Lost was unique because I'd argue that the mythology was equally important to the success and longevity of the show. The show wasn't a success purely for the characters or the mythology, it was the two working in tandem. Watching our characters as they interacted and struggled with the mythology and mysteries is what made the show work. And the island wasn't just an engaging playground to watch the characters struggle and grow. The island itself, with all its mythology, history, and conflict, was a complex character in its own right, and all of those aspects were examined in the episode Across the Sea. The episode is purely expositional, vomiting 6 seasons worth of answers into the shape of an allegorical story of good versus evil. And while I appreciated some actual answers and insight into the backstory of the island, I didn't like how the third to last episode was completely a flashback. Not only did it take us away from the main characters, but it felt like the forward momentum that was building to the final episode hit a brick wall and stopped dead. The writers waited until the last minute to finally give us answers, and so they couldn't do it in a nuanced way. They had to cram in as much as they could at the last minute. I think the writers hoped that by simply asking big questions, the story would seem more sophisticated and deep, but it really just came across as hollow and empty. I think a large portion of the fanbase genuinely enjoyed the way Lost ended, and I think another portion forced themselves to enjoy the ending despite its faults, because what was the alternative? They spent 6 years invested in the show. That couldn't be all for nothing. And then there's another vocal portion of the fanbase who flat out hated the ending of Lost. For those people who were invested in the mythology and the mysteries of Lost, here's what showrunner Damon Lindelof has to say.
If you are watching the show for the answers to your mysteries, you're not gonna like the ending. I will pull, at least 10 instances of Carlton and I saying this. If you didn't do your due diligence and listen to what we had to say, you were warned. It's not that I didn't care about the mythology of the show. I just feel like many shows have come and gone that are very focused on their mysteries and their mythologies and their ambiguity.
You can't say that the answers don't matter after you've wielded the promise of answers time and time again over the years in order to entice the audience. That's not fair. As I've said before, the characters and the mythology are tied together. You can't minimize one without damaging the other. They helped inform one another. And that was the delicate balance that worked so well until the writers stumbled to the finish line. Independent of whether or not you hated or loved the way that it ended, it's pretty cool that people are still talking about it and have very strong feelings about it. That's the intention of any art, to basically last. If it lasts, you're saying something even if people are saying it's something they don't necessarily like. With Lost, there's a fixation over the way that it ended, and I think that, in and of itself, that's a very interesting legacy for the show to have. The legacy of Lost is a mixed bag. Immediately following the show's finale, there were multiple copycat shows that came out the following years, seeking to fill the high-concept void left in Lost's absence. But shows like Flash Forward, The Event, Persons Unknown, and Alcatraz didn't last long, as audiences were hesitant to invest in another show built around a single mystery. Lost took a lot of missteps throughout its run, but to its credit, that's because Lost was taking creative gambles that previous shows hadn't. High concept, ultra-serialized, non-linear structure with a large ensemble cast, and a definitive endpoint. This went against traditional logic of television, but that's exactly what made Lost unique, and people responded to that. And now that's the norm in the landscape of television. No longer are shows reduced to the lowest common denominator. Studios have finally realized that audiences are more sophisticated and open to complex, engaging storytelling. When I think back on Lost, I try my best to disconnect the first 5.5 seasons from the final few episodes, because I really don't want its mediocre ending to ruin what was such a fun ride leading up to that point. Hours and hours spent obsessively researching online and debating theories with my friends and family, but it's hard reconciling the fact that the writers didn't have some grand scheme in mind. Sure, they had a general idea of the beginning and end, but the clues planted in every episode were just breadcrumbs to keep me watching. I trusted that the writers were in full control and knew what they were doing every step of the way. But they continued avoiding answers with more questions and more questions until I was finally given some semblance of an answer that I didn't want. I want to summarize this inner conflict with Lost into some profound closing thought, but I keep coming back to this blog post by Jason Plank that I think does it better. It perfectly encapsulates the way that I and many other Lost fans feel about the ending of the show. So I'll leave you with this. What made the show great, and ultimately an intellectual success, were the theories created by the viewers. The level of dialogue we experienced, the questions that were debated until the sun rose, that is where Lost succeeded, by showing us that we were just as lost as the creators themselves, that our individual experience is the only thing of importance, that what we take away from it defines who we actually are. Maybe the island wasn't the heart of the show. Maybe the survivors weren't the blood that was pumped into our oxygen-starved cells. Maybe the rabid fanbase was the heart. And our experience observing the island was where we found our little slice of redemption. That will be Lost's legacy. A convoluted story inside a manufactured box of mystery, a frivolous bow placed on top, which posed as something deeper than what we initially believed. A failure of immeasurable magnitude from a storytelling standpoint. A failure in the endgame. And yet, an ultimate success. One that taught us we were the survivors on the island. That our thirst for a final answer wasn't what made the show special, it was our experiences that did. A lot of my favorite writers are the ones who can tell a story that is rich in mythology, character, and world building, like Lindelof in Lost, Rowling in Harry Potter, and Tolkien in Lord of the Rings. But sorting through scattered pages of notes with minute details and rules to the world is an absolute nightmare when trying to actually write the story. That's why I'm so excited that Campfire is sponsoring this video. If you're a writer looking to simplify your process, you have to check out Campfire's writing software. Campfire streamlines the process of designing your world with features such as character sheets, map support, notes organization, character arc tracking, relationship webs, and much more all in one place. Everything is visual, so you can keep track and stay organized with every detail of your story. For example, with Campfire, you can make sure your character is where you need them to be at the right time in your story, that they're staying true to their unique rules of the world, all the while progressing through their character arc and moving toward their end goal. All good stories have the same elements, and Campfire will make sure that you don't miss a single thing in your writing process. Check out Campfire's writing software right now by going to www.campfiretechnology.com. You can sign up for Campfire Pro for the one-time cost of $50, no subscription, and start using their software instantly. They're also promoting Campfire Blaze right now at their Kickstarter page, which will be even more powerful and in-depth with brand new features. I'll have links to both their website and their Kickstarter page in the description below, so you can go check it out for yourself. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe below and also click the bell below. That way you don't miss any new content whenever it comes out. I had so many people reach out to me asking for this video specifically, so I really hope you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment below, tell me what you think, tell me the day you think Lost died, or tell me if you think it was great all the way through. I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you supporting this channel. If you also want to be a patron and help support Entertain the Elk and help me make more videos like this, click the link below. That way you can go check out the page. Patrons get exclusive content, early access to videos, and other cool rewards. It's a great way just to help support this channel and help me make more videos. So again, click the link below, go check it out. I've set a goal on there that once I reach $350, I'm gonna make the video that's been far and away my most requested, and that's the day the Fairly Odd Parents died. So again, go check out my Patreon page below and consider being a patron. Thanks again everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.